if you want to call them professional or not. I guess we'll talk about the New York Giants first, and I'm surprised for a couple of reasons. I'm not surprised that they lost to San Francisco because I said that was going to happen. I'm not surprised that they played poorly against San Francisco. I'm surprised that Ben McAdoo was allowed to fly back to New York with the team. I'm surprised that Jerry Reese wasn't fired by halftime. I'm actually surprised that the owners have come out and say that they will not make a coaching adjustment mid-season. This team is 1-8. They have embarrassed themselves for a team that had Super Bowl aspirations this year, for a team that was supposed to actually compete. We knew that their offensive line was a problem. We knew that going into the year. We figured maybe the defense will be able to pick up the slack a little bit like they did last year. Won 11 games, got them into the postseason. You would think that, right? No. Now, not only are they losing all these games, they're losing them in horrific fashion. You had the Giants up 6-3 in the first quarter. Then you let San Fran put up 14 against you by halftime, and then you let them put up another 14 in the fourth quarter. You let a team like the San Francisco 49ers, a team that hopefully in the future will be very good, but we knew this year they were going to tank. To Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch's credit, you knew they were going to tank this year. You let them walk all over you. Why was Ben McAdoo allowed to fly back to New York? If anything, if I were the owner of the Giants, I would have fired him at Levi's Stadium and made him walk back. You got to be kidding me. That was embarrassing. One of my best friends in the world put out the greatest tweet after the game, and it couldn't have been said better. It said, "Leave everybody in San Francisco," because that is exactly the type of game that the Giants played. Exactly the type of game that they played. I couldn't have agreed more myself, because from start to finish, they looked like they didn't even know what they were supposed to be doing with the football. You let the San Francisco 49ers defense walk all over your offense. Now, to Eli's credit, he threw 2 touchdowns for 273 yards. He had a very similar game that Bethard had. You look at a guy like Sterling Shepard. He had 11 catches, but he couldn't get in the end zone. You had a guy like Roger Lewis only have 3 catches. Shane Vereen couldn't do anything with the ball. Guys like Gallman who couldn't do anything with the ball. Tavares King couldn't do anything with the ball. Shane Vereen couldn't do anything with the ball. Start to finish, it was probably the most embarrassing performance that the Giants had all year. And you want to know what the worst part was? The Giants in numbers kept up with San Francisco. They had more passing first downs than San Francisco. They had more total plays than San Francisco. The rushing yards got to them, yes. They had less penalties than San Francisco. They had less turnovers than San Francisco. And they had more possession time than San Francisco. And you still got curb stomped into the ground. Your third down efficiency, 5 for 14. They were perfect going forward on fourth down, unlike San Francisco. They had the same amount of drives. Really what killed the Giants is the 49ers had better numbers on passing. They had better numbers on total yards. They had more first downs total. And clearly more points at the end of the game. You had guys like Eli Manning, to his credit, who busted his behind the entire game to try to get this team a win, to try to get them some momentum, to do something with this team. You look at their defense and their numbers that they had. Again, Landon Collins, 2 solo tackles, 7 total. You look at guys like Jason Pierre-Paul, he only had 4 tackles. You look at a guy like Janoris Jenkins, who had a horrific game. Honestly, it looked like he was just, going around like dilly-dallying all over the place. And he said, I wasn't being lazy or I didn't care. It was just a poor game. Honestly, there are words for that. Eli Apple, why is he still employed? Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, why is he still employed? This team is bad in so many ways. Honestly, and you have Kansas City this week, so I wish you the absolute best of luck. We do this just about every time that we come on SMC Sports. We look at the Giants' remaining schedule and try to figure out if they can get a win under their belt. So we're going to do that right now. So Giants have the Chiefs at home tomorrow. That's probably the only bright side for the Giants is they have them at home. So they'll probably lose by 3 touchdowns instead of 5. Then you're at Washington on Thursday night on Thanksgiving. Short week, by the way. So you get a short week out of that. Then on the 3rd, you're at Oakland. Now, I understand Oakland has struggled a lot this year, and we're going to get to them too. Going into Oakland with the team that you have right now, a team with Super Bowl aspirations, and you're 1-8. Great, have a trophy. So they're probably going to get killed there. Then they host Dallas, where Dallas at this point will probably be playing for a playoff spot, because if they lose tomorrow night against Philadelphia, you could pretty much wrap up the NFC East at that point. Give it a little bow and hand it to Philadelphia for an early Thanksgiving dinner. Then they have to play Philly at MetLife. So the bright side here is the Giants have a nice homestand really to end the season. Now, don't get me wrong, this team is not going to the playoffs. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to figure out the possibility of them actually competing in these games. Not winning, but competing. Then they're at Arizona on Christmas Eve. If you get David Johnson back, maybe by then, you're still probably going to lose. And then you host Washington on New Year's Eve to end the year. Realistically, they're going to get killed tomorrow. I think they can make Washington competitive. They're going to lose by 40 in Oakland. Dallas is going to beat them by 14. Philadelphia is going to beat them by 30. You may be able to compete with Arizona, but I still think you're going to lose that game. And I actually think you can beat the Redskins at home at the end of the year. So my realistic opinion is the Giants are going 2-14. Giants are definitely getting a top 3 pick. And if you are Ben McAdoo and Jerry Reese, and by the way, if Jerry Reese is employed by the NFL draft, then the Giants should just flip the franchise, fold it, get rid of it. Done. Because if you let this guy make one more pick, I'm going to go down to Dallas at AT&T Stadium where the draft is being hosted this year, and I'm going to rip up the draft card before Roger Goodell can take it. Because now it's just embarrassing. It's not even funny anymore. It's embarrassing. You have an offensive line that is made out of sugar packets and coffee, and you're sitting here now thinking about, drafting a quarterback. We need somebody on defense. You need to protect Eli Manning. How is he still alive with the O-line that you have? How in the world are you going to sit here and not be addressing the offensive line issue? I understand you're 1-8. I understand if you keep losing, you're going to get a good draft pick. Jerry Reese better not be the one making the pick. I feel bad for Giants fans. I really do, because you had a team this year where, again, you had Super Bowl aspirations. Not saying you were going to win the division. I picked the Giants to win the wild card. I had them as the 5 seed. And I actually had them going a couple of rounds into the postseason. 1-8. Going through their schedule, they had winnable games. You look at the Lions game. Monday night, the home opener, that was a winnable one. You had the Eagles beat in Philadelphia. You had the Buccaneers beat in Tampa Bay. You had the Chargers beat at home. How they beat the Broncos on a Sunday night in Denver, I will never understand. Never had a chance against Seattle. Never had a chance against the Rams. And honestly, never had a chance against the 49ers. Honestly, he hasn't had the greatest numbers this year, but Marquise Goodwin, and prayers to him and his family for what he's been going through for the last week. Probably the most emotional moment of the entire game, where he scored that touchdown and pointed up to the sky and pointed up to his son, who passed away that morning. So again, prayers to what him and his family have been going through. That touchdown in the game, it was over. The Giants had no fight, no desire, no charisma, no will to win, no desire to compete. And Ben McAdoo wants to come out here in a press conference and say that there were positives in the game. What is the positive? You're 1-8. How is that positive? That you went into Denver a couple of weeks ago and got lucky because Trevor Siemian couldn't play football? You got lucky because Demaryius Thomas couldn't catch anything? You got lucky because for once the defense was able to stop the run? Or you got lucky that maybe Eli Manning survived just long enough to actually throw the football down the field? Where's the positive in a 1-8 season? I will never understand that. Oh, we had positives. Really? And that's the thing. They're blinded and they're accepting of this. And that's the funniest part. Not Giants fans, because they're emotional wrecks right now and upset, and they have every right to be, of the way this season has turned out, because they were supposed to be a playoff team this year. The way this team played last year, they didn't lose much. You know, you got a couple of good draft picks. You didn't address the necessary issues, but you got a couple of good draft picks. And then a lot of people come out and say, this team's a playoff team. I had them as a playoff team. I had them winning the wild card. I did. My mistake. Maybe they still would be. After the Dallas game in week 1, you had the Lions. You should have beat Philly. You should have beat Tampa. You should have beat the Chargers, and then you beat the Broncos. Realistically, this team could have been 5-1 going into the game against Seattle, because the Lions game, they should have won. I understand their heads weren't in it. I understand on the scoreboard, it looked like they didn't have a chance, but it's your home opener. It's Monday night. It's prime time. You need to compete better. They should have won that game. They had the Eagles beat. They had the Bucks beat. They had the Chargers beat, and then they beat the Broncos. This team could have been 5-1 going into their game against Seattle. Then, yeah, maybe they lose 3 in a row. You're 5-4 now going into this game against Kansas City. You're still in a good position to go for a postseason spot. With the schedule they have coming up, Chiefs, Redskins, Raiders, Cowboys, Eagles, Cardinals, Redskins, they probably would miss the playoffs. But realistically speaking, if they won those 5 games in a row going into that Seattle game a few weeks back, somebody has got to answer for what's going on. I'm going to assume that Ben McAdoo will be fired at the end of the year. Personally, my opinion, should have never been hired to begin with. You had 1.5 million coaching candidates that year because everybody was getting fired. There's been rumors for the last 15 years that John Gruden was going to come back and coach. And my own opinion was if Tom Coughlin got fired, Jerry Reese should have went with him, or none of them should have got fired. Because normally, yes, you don't fire a head coach without firing the general manager. So you knew that when Jerry Reese kept his job, you knew they were hiring in-house. And you knew it was probably going to be Ben McAdoo. And you knew this was going to turn into an emotional train wreck at some point. And it has. This team's got no fight anymore. This team doesn't play for him. You got guys anonymously talking trash about Ben McAdoo. And that's the thing, too, is this team is filled with a bunch of cowards who won't come out and say who they are. It's like the Mets with Terry Collins. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't a big fan of Terry Collins this year. I am happy with the fact that the Mets made a managerial change. But the fact that people were anonymously talking bad behind his back is disgraceful, it's embarrassing, and it only goes to show with Ben McAdoo that he has lost complete and utter control of this organization. He has lost every bit of credibility that the Giants have earned. He has lost every bit of respect from the Giants fans, and he has lost every single bit of faith that this team can actually, let alone win another game this year, let alone be a playoff team. 1-8 ain't gonna happen. Looking at this schedule, you better pray to God that Cleveland is able to put a 2-game winning streak on the board. You better pray to God that San Francisco wins one more game, because right now the Giants are in for a top 3 pick and they could get number 1. And honestly, love the number 1 pick all you want. The reason that you now could possibly have it is embarrassing, and you should be ashamed. Ben McAdoo is a lot like Jeff Fisher was last year. When he gets fired, we're going to have nothing else to joke or talk about. And it's going to be the worst day in the history of radio. This is his press conference from the loss against San Francisco. I'm going to play it. Full credit to the NFL for this clip. This is Ben McAdoo reacting to the loss in San Francisco. Take a listen.
Ben, are you kind of at your wits' end trying to figure out, what's going on here and how to get to these guys? I mean, each week it's something.
No, never. I mean, we got, 7 games left to play? We got a lot of football left to play.
Talk about your defense. 49ers ran for over 180 yards on the ground. They punted one time, averaged about 6 punts a game. How disappointed are you within the defense?
Again, we're going to go take a look at the tape and make sure we be honest with each other after we look at the film.
And you said you saw a fight in your team today. What was the evidence there? What did you say?
Just it was close. It was tight early. Offense responded. I thought to some early scores that we gave up. Rallied down. We need to take advantage of the turnover that we got. Defense created a turnover on a heck of a play by OV there. We need to take advantage of that, but I thought we moved the ball consistently. Had some fight in us, made them go the long way. We just, we got to go take a look at the tape.
1-8, you just lost to a team that was winless coming in. Did you find that embarrassing?
No.
What would you find embarrassing? Is there a point where you would be embarrassed by what the product?
I'm not embarrassed by this team.
Ben, do you worry at all about your job security after a
No,
loss?
that doesn't have anything to do with anything. We have to find a way to win a game. We have to go address what happened out here on the field today, take a look at the tape, be honest with each other.
Do you need to address, your situation with the team, because there's going to be speculation going
What
forward.
situation? We have to go correct the tape, all right? We have to get ready for a next ball game. We have a chance to play probably one of the best teams in football next week, so no situation.
Yeah, at 1-8, you got a pretty veteran team. What do you tell them to try to keep them motivated?
Again, we have to do one thing first. We have to take a look at the tape first. We have to figure out what went wrong. We got to address it. We got to fix it. We got to move on. And we'll talk about motivation next week. They're pro football players. They need to be self-motivated. Everybody gets a paycheck this week, and we need to go out and play that way.
Pro football players, self-motivated. He's not embarrassed? If I own the Giants, and I don't have that kind of money, if I own the Giants, hearing that press conference, Ben McAdoo would not have gotten off the podium without being fired. He's not embarrassed for losing to a winless team. You have a San Francisco team and a quarterback at C.J. Beathard, who they know, if they prepped it all in practice, that San Francisco throws the ball more than anybody in the league. You're not ready for that? He threw for 288 yards and 2 touchdowns against you, and you weren't ready for that? We have to go back and look at the film and see what we can correct. The only way you can correct what you saw in the film is if you forfeit the rest of the season. Sure, the Giants, they were in the game and this and that. They were in the game because it was against a winless team. If you give them that performance tomorrow against Kansas City, the game will be 45-3 at halftime. They showed effort. I'm not embarrassed by this team. Well, you should be, because everybody else involved with the Giants, including their fan base, is embarrassed by this team. You had a year where you were supposed to compete for an NFC championship. You had a year where you were supposed to compete for the East. You had a year where you were supposed to actually do things and go far. It's one thing if we talk about like a Cleveland, a San Francisco, teams that we knew that were going to be bad this year. Actually, Cleveland I didn't even think was going to be that bad. I thought they were going to win like 4 or 5. My mistake. San Francisco, yeah, we knew they were only going to win about 3 or 4 games. We knew San Francisco was going to be bad. That's why no one's upset. You bring in a new head coach, Kyle Shanahan, a great offensive mind. You bring in a brand new general manager in John Lynch, somebody who has no experience, but San Francisco is taking a risk here. But a team like the New York Giants, number one, it's the New York market. People are upset that the Jets are winning because it cost them the number one pick and a shot at a good quarterback, which, by the way, Sam Darnold is not that good anyway, ladies and gentlemen. Don't at me. Number 2, this is the New York market. You know, Nick Flaherty and I from WMSC Sports had this conversation weeks ago. It's different if it's a Cincinnati or a Cleveland or a Phoenix, Arizona or a Denver. Maybe you could blame it on injuries, or maybe you could blame it on the fact that your team is not that good and you have to focus on the draft the year after to get this team some better players. This is New York. This is unacceptable. And somebody has got to answer for the garbage that has been put on this football field for the last 10 weeks of the season. It's utterly and emotionally embarrassing to think of it that way. When you look at this New York Giants team, and again, supposed to go to the big game, supposed to try to win an NFC championship, and try to do something with this organization. The fact that you can address the media and say you're not embarrassed, that your job security doesn't matter right now. Your job security, you better be looking at other teams that may need a head coach at the end of the year. You might want to start looking at high school football teams that need a coach. You might want to start looking at college teams that need a coach. Because the fact that you can sit here and say that my job security doesn't matter, yeah, it does. And it's going to at the end of the year, whether the owners decide to fire you or not, and they better. Because I'm not ready for the backlash that this organization's going to get if that happens.